The high plains were a single note of brown held for 1,000 miles. The wind blew dust into everything, and it settled in the folds of a man his blanket. It coated the tin cup on his table. It built small dunes against the foundations of the town. This was the West in the late 1800s. The drought had lasted 3 summers. Rivers were dry cracks in the earth. The sun was a hammer. Ethan Matthews owned a small ranch in this emptiness. He was a man made of straight lines and quiet habits. He rose before the sun. He checked his fences. He mended what was broken. He did not waste movement. He did not waste words. His life was a set of rules. The rules kept the ranch running. The rules kept the loneliness at bay. Or perhaps the rules were the loneliness. He had come from Missouri. He left 10 years ago. His parents were gone. The farm was gone. They had worked hard. They had failed. The memory of that failure was a cold stone inside him. It had taught him a hard lesson. Attachment was a risk. A wife, a child, a friend. These were things that could be lost. He avoided closeness. He built fences around himself just as he built them around his land. He wanted a home. He wanted the warmth of a family. He did not know how to reach for it. He only knew how to build corrals and mend tack. His ranch sat 20 miles from the town. Between his land and the town lived the Apache. They kept to the high mesas. Their world was separate. A thin line existed between the white settlers and the Apache. Sometimes there was trade. A settler might trade flour for woven blankets. Sometimes there was suspicion. A missing calf would start whispers. Ethan left them alone. They left him alone. He had heard stories about their ways. He heard them in the saloon. Men spoke of their honor. They spoke of their laws. One law was strange. A man who saved a life owed that life. Or the person saved owed the savior. The men in the saloon were not clear. They just knew it was a bond, a debt of life paid with life. Ethan thought it was just talk. The town was named 3 Rivers. It was a name from a time with more water. Now it was just dust and wood. Malcolm Delaney was the most important man in 3 Rivers. He owned the largest cattle operation. His herds drank most of what water was left. He had sway with the sheriff. He had the ear of the territorial judge. Delaney was a large man. He had a loud voice. He believed the land was his for the taking. He did not like the Apache. He saw them as a barrier. He saw their land as future grazing for his cattle. His shadow fell long over the town. It touched the law. It touched the bank. It touched the small ranchers who depended on his goodwill. Ethan rode his horse. The leather of the reins was worn smooth. It felt familiar in his hands. The horse, his name was Bounty. Bounty moved with a steady gait. The sweat from the horse rose in the dry air. It smelled sharp, like ammonia and salt. Ethan smelled the dry grass. It smelled like dust and time. He did this work. He focused on the small things. The world was built from small things. A loose shoe on a horse, a weak post in a fence line, a crack in a water barrel. He saw these things. He fixed them. His focus was narrow. It was deep. This was how he survived. His ranch house was an empty shell. He had built it well. The joints were tight. The roof did not leak, but inside it was hollow. There was a table. There was a chair. There was a bed. There was a cold stove. He swept the floor every morning. He washed his tin plate after every meal. He kept it clean. He kept it ordered. The porch boards were old. They groaned under his weight. He sat on the porch step. He watched the sun go down. It was a fire in the distance. It left the sky bruised. He took his boots off. He always took them off at the door. He placed them side by side. They were old boots. The leather was scarred, but they were clean. The heels were even. He had repaired them himself. The boots were a symbol. They were his principle. A man stood on his own principles. A man kept his tools in order. His boots were tools. His principles were simple. Work hard. Owe no man. Speak true. These rules were his foundation. The sky was changing. It had been white-hot for days. Now it turned a strange color. It was green and purple. Clouds gathered. They were dark. They were heavy, but they held no rain. This was the look of dry thunder. Lightning without water, lightning that started fires. A deep worry settled in Ethan. A fire now would move like a flood. It would consume everything. It would take the dry grass. It would take the gray wood buildings. It would take the ranches. He had heard the talk in town. The last time he bought flour, Delaney was moving cattle. He was pushing them closer to the mesas. He was pushing toward Apache land. The rumor was Delaney wanted more grazing. He wanted the grass the Apache used. He was not a man who asked. He was a man who took. Men said Delaney was willing to provoke trouble. He was willing to start a fire. He would blame the Apache. Then he would ask the law to move them. The law in town listened to Delaney. He paid more taxes than anyone. His word was heavier than truth. The air grew still. The birds stopped singing. The world held its breath. Ethan looked at the dark clouds. He felt the tension in the air. It was like the moments before a gunfight. Everything was quiet. Everything was waiting. A storm was coming. It was not a storm of water. It was a storm of trouble. Ethan stood up. He went inside his empty house. He checked his rifle. It was clean. He checked his water barrels. They were half full. It was not enough. It would never be enough if the fire came. He was a man who liked to be prepared. He knew you could not prepare for everything. You could not prepare for malice. You could not prepare for the sky. He thought again of Missouri. He thought of his mother, her hands chapped from lye soap. He thought of his father, his back bent from lifting stones. They had prepared. They had worked. The land had betrayed them. A drought and a hard winter. It had taken everything. It had broken them. He would not be broken. He would stand. He would endure. This resolution was his core. It was why he lived alone. It was why he avoided the town. It was why he mistrusted the future. He had built a life that could withstand loss. He had built a life with nothing to lose. The first flash of lightning split the sky. It was miles away. It struck the dry hills. There was no thunder, just the silent light. A second flash. Closer this time. Ethan watched from his porch. He was a single man on a small ranch. The world was large. It was dangerous. He had chosen this life. He had chosen solitude. He believed it was his duty to survive. He did not know that survival was only the beginning. He did not know that a family could be a choice. A family could be built, like a fence, like a home. Not from blood, but from a decision, from a promise. The smell of ozone reached him, the smell of something burning far away. The wind began to pick up. It did not bring cool air. It brought more heat. It brought the scent of smoke. The disaster was no longer near. It was here. The slow pace of his life was about to break. The quiet was about to end. A fire was coming, and it would change everything. He pulled his boots back on. He did not hesitate. He moved toward his horse. Ethan swung the saddle onto Bounty, his back. The horse sidestepped. The air was wrong. It was electric. The smell of burning was no longer a distant threat. It was sharp. It was the smell of old wood, dry pine, something built by man. He finished the cinch. He did not waste time. He moved with the economy of a man who lives alone. He grabbed his canteen. He grabbed the old canvas bucket he kept by the well. He did not know what he would find. He only knew he had to ride. He rode east, toward the plume of smoke. The smoke was dark. It was not the clean white smoke of a grass fire. It was black, oily. It boiled into the sky. It stained the strange green air. Bounty was nervous. His ears flickered. He tossed his head. Ethan kept a firm hand on the reins. "Easy, boy, just a look." He topped the ridge. He saw it. Below him in the small canyon. There was an old miner's shack. It was a forgotten place, built 20 years ago. Abandoned 15 years ago. The dry lightning had found it. The shack was a torch. Flames licked 20 feet high. The roof was already gone. It was just a chimney of fire. He pulled Bounty to a stop. There was nothing to save. The fire would burn itself out. It was too far from his own land to be a threat. It was just a building. A relic. He started to turn the horse. Then he heard it. It was thin. It was high. It was not the sound of burning wood. It was not an animal. It was a scream. A human scream. His blood went cold. He listened. The fire roared. It snapped. It hissed. And then again. Fainter this time. A wail. A child. He did not think. He slid from the saddle. He grabbed the canteen. He unhooked his neckerchief. He poured precious water onto the wool. It steamed. He tied the wet cloth around his face. It covered his nose, his mouth. The air he breathed was hot. It tasted of wool and smoke. He ran toward the shack. "Hello!" he yelled. His voice was muffled. The heat was a wall. He had to lean into it. The front door was gone. It was just a square hole of pure fire. He could not enter there. He heard the sound again, a desperate sobbing. It came from the side. He ran to the west wall. The flames were licking out of the window hole. The wood was old. It was cracking. "I am here," he shouted. He looked for a way in. There was none. Only the burning wall. He braced himself. He drew back his right leg. He kicked. His boot heel struck the dry pine. The wood splintered. It resisted. He kicked again. Harder. A board snapped. A hole opened. It was like kicking open the door to a furnace. Heat and smoke blasted him. It threw him back. He fell to one knee. The cloth on his face was already drying. He scrambled forward. He plunged through the hole. Inside was hell. It was dark. It was red. He could not see. The smoke was a physical thing. It filled his eyes, his lungs. He dropped to the floor. He crawled. The air was fractionally better. He could breathe. It was like breathing needles. "Where are you?" he choked. He heard a whimper. To his left. He crawled over something, a broken chair. It was on fire. He shielded his face. He kept moving. He saw them. They were in the far corner, huddled under a small table. The table itself was smoldering. 2 children. Small. Their eyes were huge. They were white circles in the soot that covered their faces. Apache. The older one. A girl. Maybe 6 years old. She had her arms around a smaller child. She looked at Ethan with pure, animal terror. A sound split the air. A deep groan. The main roof beam. It was giving way. There was no time for words. No time for comfort. He reached for the older girl. "Come!" he rasped. She screamed. She tried to bite his hand. He ignored it. He grabbed her arm. He pulled her. She fought him. "No time." He said he was not asking. He lunged forward. He scooped the smaller child up. She was limp, maybe 3 years old. He threw her over his shoulder like a sack of flour. She was terrifyingly light. He grabbed the older girl her wrist. He did not let go. He stood up. The heat was unbearable. He turned. He ran. He did not know where the hole was. He just ran toward the light. He heard a crack like a cannon shot. The air above him split. "Move." He dove. He threw himself forward. He held onto the children. He crashed through the broken boards. He landed on the hot, dry dirt. He rolled. He covered the small bodies with his own. A second later, the roof fell in. The beam crashed down exactly where they had been. The shack imploded. It became a mountain of fire. Sparks shot 100 feet into the air. The sound was a roar, a final, angry breath. It sounded like a giant door slamming shut, a door on his quiet, a door on his solitude. He did not know it then. He just felt the blistering heat on his back. He lay on the ground. He could not move. He was coughing, a deep, racking cough. It felt like his lungs were tearing. He tried to get air. He could only get smoke. He pushed himself up. He looked at the children. The little one was not moving. He laid her on the ground. Gently, he put his ear to her chest. He felt it, a small, fast beat. She was breathing, shallow, but breathing. The older girl scrambled away from him. She moved like a crab, backwards, on her hands and heels. She got to her feet. She stood 20 feet away. She was shaking. Her eyes never left him. They were not filled with gratitude. They were filled with hate. "It is all right," Ethan said. His voice was broken. "You are safe." The girl screamed at him. It was not a word he knew. It was a sound of pure fear. She ran to her sister. She grabbed her hand. She pulled. "Tianita." The little one, her name was Tianita. She stirred. She coughed. She began to cry. A thin, weak wail. "Wait," Ethan said. He tried to stand up. His legs were weak. "You need water. You breathe the smoke." He reached for his canteen. The older girl saw the movement. She thought he was reaching for a weapon. She shrieked again. She pulled her sister harder. The little one stumbled to her feet. They ran. They did not run toward the open land. They ran toward the rocks, up the side of the canyon. They moved like shadows. They scrambled up the scree. They were small. They were fast. "Wait," he called. They did not look back. They reached the scrub oak at the top of the rise. They vanished. Ethan stood alone. He watched the spot where they had disappeared. There was no sound, just the crackling of the fire. The wind moved the smoke. The silence of the high plains rushed back in. He was breathing hard. His throat was raw. He coughed. He spat. The spittle was black. He looked down at himself. His shirt was scorched. The left sleeve was burned away. His arm was red. Blistering was already starting. He looked at his hands. He tried to make a fist. Pain shot up his arm. His right hand, the one that had grabbed the burning chair, the one that had pulled the girl. It was burned, badly. The skin was white and tight across the knuckles. He walked slowly to his horse. Bounty was still nervous. He danced at the end of his reins. "Easy, boy," Ethan whispered. "It is over." He pulled himself into the saddle. The movement was agony. His burned hand on the saddle horn, his raw lungs, every muscle in his body ached from the tension. The ride home was slow. The adrenaline drained away. It left only the pain and a strange, hollow feeling. He reached his ranch. The sun was high. It was a normal day. The chickens were scratching in the dirt. A calf was bawling for its mother. It was his world. It was safe. He slid off the horse. He did not unsaddle Bounty. He walked to the water trough. He plunged his right arm in, up to the elbow. The cold water was a shock. It was a clean, sharp pain. It was better than the fire. He gasped. He leaned his head against the wet wood of the trough. He stood there for a long time. He watched the water turn pink around his hand. He finally went inside. The house was quiet. It was cool. It was empty. The emptiness had always been his protection. Now it felt like a judgment. He had held 2 lives in his arms, 2 small, warm bodies. Now his arms were empty. The silence in the cabin was louder than the fire. He found the jar of salve, lard and comfrey. His mother had taught him to make it. He did not think he would ever need it. He smeared the grease over his burns, his hand, his arm. The pain made him hiss. He found clean rags. He wrapped his hand. He wrapped his arm. It was clumsy work with his left hand. He sat at his table, his one chair, his one tin cup. He stared at the wall. The wall was made of pine boards. He had cut them himself. They were solid. He thought about the girls. Apache. They were terrified of him. They had run from him. He had saved their lives. And they had run. He did not blame them. He knew what men who looked like him meant to them. He knew the stories. He knew the hate. He had saved them from the fire. He could not save them from their fear of him. It did not matter. He had not done it for thanks. He had not done it for a reward. He had done it because it was the only thing to do. A person was in the fire. You go in. It was a rule. It was simpler than the laws in town. No one had seen. No one would ever know. Not the sheriff. Not the men in the saloon, not Malcolm Delaney. The act was his alone. It was clean. It was pure. It was an action. It was not a story. It existed only for him, and for the two girls who had run away. The afternoon wore on. The tension left his body. It left him exhausted. He felt an ache, a deep ache. It was in his hands. It was in his lungs. It was in the center of his chest. It was a new kind of loneliness. He had built his life to withstand loss. He had not built it to understand this feeling of connection to two people who saw him as a monster. He lay on his cot. He did not light the lamp. The sun went down. The cabin filled with shadows. He lay awake. His bandaged hand throbbed on his chest. It felt like a heartbeat, a heavy, painful pulse. He kept hearing the scream. He kept seeing the fire. He kept feeling the small, light weight of the child on his shoulder. He finally slept. It was a bad sleep, full of smoke. He woke before dawn. The habit of his life pulled him from the cot. The world was dark. The air was cool. The smell of smoke was gone. He stood on his porch. He looked at the east. The sky was turning gray. It was another day. The rules were simple. Cows to check, fences to ride, water to haul. He would do the work. The world would not change. He was wrong. The fire had not been an ending. It had been a beginning. The smoke had cleared, but the consequences were just now riding toward him. They were coming with the sun. Tomorrow was here, and it was about to knock on his door. Ethan woke to the familiar ache. His hand was a dull, heavy throb. He unwrapped the rags. The skin was angry, red and weeping. He cleaned it as best he could with his left hand. He smeared more salve on it. He rewrapped it. The simple task took him 3 times as long as usual. He made coffee. He stood on his porch. The sun was just a promise. The air was clean. The smoke was gone. The world looked exactly the same. The brown hills, the pale sky, the vast silence. But it was not the same. The silence was heavier. The emptiness of his cabin felt different. It was not a fortress. It was a void. He tried to lose himself in the work. Work was his religion. He fixed a loose hinge on the chicken coop. He split firewood. He did it all one-handed. It was slow. It was awkward. It made him angry. The anger was a relief. It was better than the hollow feeling. He was mending a section of fence, the one that separated the small horse pasture from the main yard. He was clumsy with the hammer. He was trying to hold a nail with his left hand. His right hand, the bandaged one, it was useless. He cursed. He dropped the hammer. He straightened up. He wiped sweat from his face with his good arm. That was when he saw them. They were riding from the east, from the direction of the mesas. 3 riders. They were not cowboys. Their pace was not hurried. It was deliberate, steady. He stood by the fence. He did not move. He did not reach for the rifle that leaned against the porch. He just watched. The lead rider was on a black horse, a strong Mustang that moved with a fluid, proud gait. As they drew closer, he saw it was a woman. She sat straight. Her black hair was tied back. She wore buckskin. A child rode behind her, her small arms wrapped around the woman her waist. Beside them, on a small, shaggy pony, rode the other child. He recognized them. It was the 2 girls from the fire. They stopped. They were 30 feet away. The woman slid from the horse. She moved with grace. She put her hands on the small child, her waist, and lifted her down. The older girl slid from her pony. The 2 children immediately moved. They stood behind the woman. They used her as a shield. The woman walked forward. She stopped 10 feet from him. She was tall. Her face was strong. Her eyes were dark. They were not afraid. They were assessing. She looked at him. She looked at his bandaged hand. She looked at his small, clean ranch. She was not begging. She was not lost. She was here for a purpose. "You are Ethan Matthews," she said. It was not a question. Her voice surprised him. His memory of the Apache was of guttural sounds, of men in town trying to imitate their speech. Her voice was clear. Her English was perfect. It was low. It held a rhythm he did not recognize. But the words were the words from his own language. "I am," he said. His own voice sounded rough. "I am Kimela. These are my daughters. Chenoa. Tianita." He looked at the girls. They peeked from behind their mother, her legs. Chenoa, the older one, the one who had fought him. Her eyes were still dark with fear. But there was something else now. Tianita, the little one. She looked at his bandaged hand. She pointed. She whispered something to her mother. "She asks about the fire," Kimela said. She did not look back at her child. Her eyes stayed on Ethan. "It is nothing," Ethan said. He felt awkward. He did not know the rules for this. "You went into the fire," Kimela said. She stated it as a fact. "You pulled my daughters from the burning. You saved their lives." Ethan shifted. He looked at the ground. He looked at the hammer he had dropped. "They were in trouble. I did what was needed." "You did what others would not," she said. "Chenoa told me you came through the wall. The roof fell. You covered them with your body. This is true." Yes, he did not know what else to say. He wanted this to be over. He wanted them to go. This attention was worse than the pain in his hand. "In the way of my people," Kimela said. Her voice did not change. It remained steady. "A life saved is a life owed. You have saved 2 lives. Ethan shook his head. "No, there is no debt. I do not want anything. I am glad they are safe. That is all." Kimela looked at him. It was a long, patient look, as if he were a child who did not understand a simple truth. "It is not what you want. It is the law. The debt is not paid with skins. It is not paid with horses. A debt of life is paid with life." Ethan felt a cold unease. He did not understand. "What do you mean?" Kimela took a breath. She stood even straighter. "My husband was killed 2 winters ago. I have no man. My children have no father. We have no one to build our home. We have no one to protect our fire." She paused. She let the words settle in the dry air. "You have no wife. You have no family. Your house is empty. Your fire is cold. You saved my family. Now, we are your family. My life is yours. I will live in your house. I will be your partner. I will cook. I will mend. I will work your land with you. My children will be your children. We will build a home together. This is the law. The debt is paid." The silence that followed was absolute. The wind stopped. The birds were quiet. Ethan stared at her. He could not have heard her right. His mind could not process the words. A proposal, a woman, an Apache woman, proposing marriage, or something like it, proposing it as a payment, as a law. It was the most shocking thing he had ever heard. It inverted the entire world. Women did not do this. White men did not live with Apache women. Not like this. Not openly. His first reaction was a gut punch of fear. Not of her, of the world. He saw the faces in town. He heard the laughter in the saloon. He saw Malcolm Delaney, his cruel smile. He saw the sheriff turning a blind eye. He saw his ranch, his small, quiet ranch. He saw it burning. Not from lightning, but from hatred. He saw his past, his mother and father, their failure, their shame. This was a new kind of failure, a new kind of shame. "No," he said. The word was sharp. Too sharp. "No, I cannot." Kimela did not flinch. Her expression did not change. "You do not understand." "I understand," he said. He was breathing hard. The old panic was rising. The fear of connection. The fear of loss. "I understand that you cannot live here. It is impossible. My world, the people in the town, they would not allow it. You would not be safe. The children would not be safe." He tried to soften his voice. "I do not want a servant. I do not want to own your life. That is not right. I will not accept a debt that is paid with a person. Camilla stepped closer. She was not intimidated. She was explaining, I am not a servant. I am Camilla. I am the daughter of a chief. I am not offering you my servitude. I am offering you my partnership. You speak of safety. We are Apache. We are never safe. Safety is a story white men tell themselves. You speak of what your people will allow. I do not care what they allow. Her voice grew stronger. It had a fire in it, a fire as hot as the one in the shack. The spirits are the only law. The spirits led my children to that empty shack. They spirits sent the fire to that wood. The spirits sent you to that place at that moment. This was not chance. This is our path. This is the way it is written. To refuse this is to refuse your own life. It is to break the world. Ethan was speechless. He was a man of simple rules. Work, truth, no debt. Her rules were bigger. They were older. They were tied to the sky, to the earth, to a power he did not believe in. He looked past her, at his empty house, at the cold stovepipe, at the one chair sitting on the porch. He had built a life with nothing to lose. She was right. It was an empty life. It was a cold fire. Tayanita, the little one. She let go of her mother, her dress. She took 2 small steps forward. She stopped. She was only a few feet from him. She was not looking at his face. She was looking at his bandaged hand. She said a word. It was soft. Camilla looked down. A small, sad smile touched her lips. It was the first change in her expression. She asks if the fire hurt you. The question cut through Ethan, his fear. It cut through the laws. It cut through the politics of the town. It was a child, asking if he was in pain. He looked at Tianita. He crouched down, slowly so as not to scare her. His knees cracked. He was now at her level. Chenoa watched him. Her hands were fists, but she did not run. Ethan looked at the little girl. He nodded. Yes, he said. His voice was rough. It hurts some. Tianita watched him. She took one more step. She reached out her small, brown hand. She did not touch the bandage. She just held her hand near it, as if to feel the heat. Then she pulled it back. Ethan looked up at Camilla. His mind was chaos. The town, Delaney, the shame, the fear, and then the small hand. The empty house, the quiet, the secret, buried wish for a family, for a home that was not just a shell. He stood up. He was a man standing on the edge of a cliff. He could stay where it was safe, or he could jump. If, he said, the word tore itself from his throat. If you were to stay, it cannot be for debt. Camilla waited. It cannot be a servant's. It cannot be what you said. Your life is mine. It cannot be that. It would be a partnership. Camilla said, I choose it. You choose it. The debt is the path. The life is the choice. He was astonished by her words. She understood. Yes, he said, a choice. He was thinking fast, faster than he had ever thought. It would have to be right by my laws, not just yours. You would have to be protected. The children, protected by the law, not just by me. He was talking about papers. He was talking about the courthouse. He was talking about a line on a document that the sheriff would have to honor. My people, he said, they respect paper. They respect a legal right. You would have to have a legal right to be here, to this land, as equals. He had said it. The word hung in the air. Equals. Camilla nodded, a slow, deep nod. That is a good word. It is a strong word. We will make it right by your laws. We will make it right by mine. A home. It is the same thing. A home. Ethan felt a strange lurch. He was terrified. He was more afraid than he had been in the burning building. That was a simple danger. This was complex. This would change everything, forever. But he also felt a spark, a small, dangerous spark of hope. the hollow place inside him. It did not feel so cold. "I need time," he said. He was pleading. "I cannot just... It is not ready. The house. I need to make it right. Like I said, I need to go to town. I need to see a man. About the law." Kimela understood. "It is good. You will prepare. We will prepare." She turned to her daughters. She said something in her language. Chenoa looked at Ethan. Her eyes were wide. She was not just afraid. She was confused. She was curious. Kimela swung herself onto the black Mustang. She pulled Tianita up behind her. "We will go," she said. "We will return in 3 days. When the sun is high, we will come." She did not wait for an answer. She turned the horse. Chenoa mounted her pony. As they turned, Ethan, his gaze lifted, past them, to the high ridge, the one that overlooked his ranch from the west. There was a rider, a single man on a horse, a silhouette against the bright morning sky. He was too far away to see his face, but Ethan knew the shape. He knew the way the man sat his horse. It was one of Delaney, his men. He was just watching. He had seen it all. He had seen the Apache woman. He had seen the children. He had seen them talking to Ethan for the past 10 minutes. The rider sat for a long moment. Then, slow and deliberate, he turned his horse. He dipped back over the ridge. He was gone. Ethan, his blood ran cold. The news would be in Three Rivers by noon. The story would be in the saloon by nightfall. Delaney would know. The clock had started. He watched Kimela and her daughters ride away. They did not look back. They became smaller. They were 3 small shapes against the vast brown land. He stood by his broken fence. The hammer was at his feet. His bandaged hand throbbed. His empty, quiet world was gone. It had burned away yesterday. Today, something new and terrifying was beginning. He did not know if it was a home or a war. Maybe it was both. Ethan stood frozen by the fence post. The dust from the 3 riders was a faint haze in the east. The shadow from the ridge to the west, where Delaney, his man, had been, felt like a physical weight. 3 days. The words echoed in the silence. He had 3 days to rebuild his world. The fear was a cold sickness in his stomach. The town, Delaney, the whispers, the looks. He saw his small, orderly life shattering. He saw the hatred. He saw the fire again, but this time it was not a shack. It was his own home. Then he looked at his house, the empty porch, the single, dark window. It was a shell. He had called it a home, but it was just a place to stay dry. Kimela had seen it. "Your fire is cold." She had said she was right. The fear did not go away, but another feeling pushed up beside it, a stubborn, angry resolve. He was a man who built things. He built fences. He built sheds. He had built this house. He had 3 days. He would build a home, or he would build the beginnings of one. He picked up the hammer he had dropped. His bandaged hand protested. The pain was sharp. He ignored it. He walked to the small lean-to where he kept his lumber. He had planks of pine, cured, dry. He had saved them for a new water trough. They would be beds. He spent the rest of the day working. The work was his anchor. It was the only thing he understood. He could not fight whispers. He could not fight the law. Not yet, but he could fight a pine board. He measured. He sawed. The sound of the saw blade was a rough song in the quiet yard. It was hard. One-handed work. He had to brace the wood with his knee. He had to guide the saw with his left hand. Sweat poured off him. His bad hand throbbed. He cursed. He kept sawing. He was building a bunk bed, a small one. For children, the idea was strange to him. He had never built anything for a child. He had never built anything for anyone but himself. As he worked, he thought of the 2 girls. Chenoa, all fear and fire. Tianita, her small, curious hand held out to his pain. He sanded the edges. He used his good hand. He ran it over the wood. No splinters. It had to be safe. The wood was pale and clean. It smelled like a forest. It smelled new. It was the first new thing in his house in 10 years. By evening, the frame was done. He moved it inside. The cabin was small. It took up one whole corner. It made the room crowded. It made it look lived in. He stood back. A bed with no mattress. But it was a start. He looked around. The room was dark. The kitchen was just a cold stove and a dry sink. His one cup, his one plate. This would not do. He cleaned. He scrubbed the floor. He scoured the sink. He threw out old rags. He felt a desperate need to make the place clean. Not just orderly, but clean, welcoming. He found a half-used bar of soap. It smelled like lye. He used it all. He knew what he had to do. He had to go to town. The next morning, he rode out. He hated it. He felt like every eye in the territory was on him. His bandaged hand was a beacon. He knew the rider from the ridge had told his story. He was the man who had brought the Apache woman to his land. He rode into 3 rivers. The town was quiet. Too quiet. Men on the boardwalk stopped talking. They watched him pass. He saw the curtains move in the windows. He felt the stairs. They were hard. They were cold. He had lived on the edge of this town for a decade. He had been invisible. Now he was a spectacle. His first stop was not the general store. It was a small, dusty office at the end of the street. The sign was faded. Amos Keller, attorney at law. Keller was an old man. He looked like he was made of dust and paper. He had been in this territory longer than Delaney. He was one of the few men who did not take Delaney his money. Ethan walked in. The small bell on the door tinkled. Keller looked up over his spectacles. "Mr. Matthews, this is a surprise." Ethan stood in the middle of the room. He did not know how to start. He twisted his hat in his good hand. "I need papers, Mr. Keller." "Papers," Keller repeated. He motioned to a chair. Ethan did not sit. "I need legal papers, for protection. Protection from what creditors, cattle rustlers. From the law. From the town." Ethan took a breath. He said it, plain. "An Apache woman and her 2 children are coming to live at my ranch. I need them to be safe, legally." Keller took off his spectacles. He polished them. He put them back on. He looked at Ethan. He was really looking at him. "Coming to live with you? As what hired help?" "As partners." Ethan said. The word sounded right. It was Camilla, her word. "I want to make a paper, a document, that says they have a right to be there, that the land is theirs too, that they are not trespassing, that they cannot be taken." Keller leaned back. "You are talking about a joint tenancy, a deed of partnership. You are talking about giving away half of your land." "I am talking about making it right." Ethan said, She saved my life, in a manner of speaking, and I saved her children. It is a debt, but I want it to be a choice. I want the law to see it as a choice." The old lawyer was silent. He looked at Ethan, his bandaged hand. He looked at his earnest, worried face. "You know what this town will say, son. You know what Malcolm Delaney will do." "I know," Ethan said. "That is why I'm here. I need the paper. I need it to be strong enough to hold up in court." Keller nodded, slowly. "That is a brave thing you are trying to do, Mr. Matthews, or a very foolish one." "Maybe both," Ethan said. "It will cost you." "I have some money saved." "It will cost you more than money." Keller said. He sighed. "All right, I will draw it up. A partnership agreement, naming Kimela. What is her name?" "Kimela." "Naming Kimela and her issue, Chenoa and Tianita, as equal partners in the operation and ownership of the Matthews Ranch. It is highly irregular, but it is not illegal. Not yet. It will take me a day. Come back tomorrow." Ethan felt a weight lift. a small one. "Thank you, Mr. Keller." "Do not thank me yet," the lawyer said, already pulling a fresh sheet of paper toward him. "Now get out. I have work to do." Ethan left. His next stop was the general store. This was harder. This was the public. He pushed the door open. The bell rang. The store was run by Mrs. Avery. She was a widow, a sharp-eyed woman who had seen everything. The store was full. 2 women from the town. 3 ranch hands from a neighboring spread. They all stopped talking. The silence was heavy. It was thick with judgment. Ethan felt his face flush. He kept his eyes down. He walked to the counter. "Mrs. Avery." "Mr. Matthews," she said. Her voice was level. "Your hand. That looks painful." "It is," he said. "What can I get for you?" He read from his list. "Flour, beans, coffee, a sack of oats." She gathered the items. The store was silent behind him. He could feel the stares on his back. "And," he said, his voice low, "I need some fabric for curtains." This caused a small gasp from one of the women. "Curtains. For his empty bachelor's shack." Mrs. Avery did not blink. "We have some bolts in the back. What color were you thinking?" I do not know. Something, not dark." She led him to the back. She pulled down a bolt of cloth. It was yellow. It had small white flowers on it. "This is calico. It is cheerful. It washes well." "That is fine," Ethan said. He did not care. He just wanted to go. "You will need thread and a needle." She added them to the pile. "Building a home, Mr. Matthews?" she asked. Her voice was quiet. It was not mocking. It was a simple question. He met her eyes. He saw kindness, a small, rare thing. "I am trying, ma'am." "That is all any of us can do," she said. She wrapped his goods. He paid. He carried the heavy sacks out. No one spoke to him. No one helped him. He loaded his horse. He had one last stop. He dreaded it. The saloon. He did not want to drink. He needed to know what Delaney was saying. He needed to hear the threat from the source. He tied Bounty outside the saloon. He pushed the swinging doors open. If the store was quiet, the saloon was a tomb. The piano player stopped. Mid-note. Every man at the bar, at the tables, turned. They looked at him. And in the corner, at his usual table, sat Malcolm Delaney. He was a large man. He wore a suit. Even in the heat, he had 2 of his foremen with him. Delaney smiled. It was a slow, cruel smile. He did not speak to Ethan. He spoke to the room. "Well, it seems our standards are slipping in 3 Rivers. We work hard to build a clean, respectable town, a white town, for white folks. We pay our taxes. We build our churches." He took a drink of his whiskey. "And then some folks, they get lonely, they forget what is proper. They decide to invite the wilderness right into their homes. They decide to mix what God himself saw fit to keep separate." The room was tense. The men were listening. They were Delaney, his audience. "It is a sickness," Delaney said. He was looking at Ethan now. "It is a weakness, and it is dangerous. It endangers our women. It endangers our children. It endangers our property. It is an infection, and infections, well, they need to be burned out." The threat was clear. It was not just a threat to Ethan. It was a threat to Kimala, to her children. Ethan stood by the bar. His bandaged hand was starting to ache, a deep, burning throb. He wanted to hit something. He wanted to yell. He wanted to defend her. But he knew it would do no good. Words were Delaney, his weapon, not his. So he did nothing. He stood there. He met Delaney, his gaze. He held it for 1 second, 2, 3. Then he turned. He walked out of the saloon. The doors swung shut behind him. The silence held for a moment. And then he heard Delaney, his loud, booming laugh. The ride home was long. The supplies were heavy. The weight of the town, his hate, was heavier. He felt the old fear again. The fear of failure. He was not just risking himself now. He was risking them. He was not a good enough man for this. He was a simple man. A quiet man. This was too big. He got back to the ranch. The sun was setting. He unloaded his horse. He carried the goods inside. He put the food away. He saw the bolt of yellow fabric. He unrolled it. He spent the next hour working. He cut the fabric. He used his teeth and his one good hand. He hemmed it. His stitches were large. They were clumsy. A child could have done better. But he finished. He hung the curtains over the dark, square window. It changed the room. The last light of the sun came through the yellow cloth. It was a warm light. It was a soft light. It made the new pine beds glow. It made the cabin feel full. The smell of new fabric, the smell of clean soap, the sound of his own hammer. These were the details of a home. He went outside. He checked the perimeter of his property, just as he feared. Near the fence line, in the soft dust by the west pasture, he saw them, boot prints, 2 sets, not his. They were deep, made by heavy men. They had been here today, while he was in town, spying, watching his empty house. Delaney, his threat was not just words in a saloon. It was here. It was on his land. Ethan went back inside. He bolted the door. He sat at his table, in his one chair. He looked at the bunk beds. He looked at the yellow curtains. The fear was still there. He was not good enough. But it did not matter. Good enough or not. He had made a promise. He had given his word. He was a man of simple rules. He did not break his word. He would do what was right, not what was easy. He put his head in his good hand. He waited for the 3rd day. He was ready. The sun was a hot hand on his neck. It was high noon. The 3rd day. Ethan stood on his porch. He had done all he could. The house was clean. The small beds were built. The yellow curtains hung in the window. A strange spot of color in his brown world. The legal paper from Amos Keller was folded in his shirt pocket. It felt heavy, like a stone. He waited. His good hand opened and closed. His bandaged hand ached. He had ridden out to the ridge that morning. He had seen no one, but he knew they were being watched. The boot prints by the fence had been a clear message. He heard the sound of horses, not from the east, where he expected them, but from the north. They came over the rise, following the dry creek bed. It was a larger group this time. Camilla was in the lead, on her black Mustang. The 2 girls were with her, on their pony. But behind them rode 3 men, Apache. They were armed. They sat on their horses with a stillness that was unnerving. They were not settlers. They were warriors. They were an escort. They stopped, just as before. 30 feet from the house, Camilla slid from her horse. She helped her daughters down. The 3 men stayed mounted. They watched Ethan. Their faces were like stone. One man moved his horse forward. He was older than the others. His face was marked by sun and time. He had a long scar on his cheek. He looked at Ethan. He looked at the house. He looked at the new, pale wood of the bunk beds, visible through the open door. Camilla walked to Ethan. She stopped. "This is my brother, Chaitin." Ethan nodded to the man. Chaitin. Chaitin dismounted. He walked toward Ethan. He was a tall man, as tall as Ethan, but leaner. He moved with a quiet, dangerous grace. He stopped directly in front of Ethan. His eyes were dark and piercing. He was looking for weakness. "You are the man from the fire," Chaitin said. His English was clear, accented, but strong. "I am. You live on this land, alone." "I have until today." Chaitin looked at Camilla, then back at Ethan. "My sister says you have given your word, that this is a partnership, that she is not your woman, but your equal." "That is what the paper says." Ethan said. He pulled the document from his pocket. He held it out. Chaitin did not take it. He did not look at it. I do not read white man his paper. Paper burns. I read a man his eyes. He stepped closer. Ethan could smell the smoke on his clothes. The man was a few inches from his face. She is the widow of my friend. She is the mother of my blood. Your town hates my people. This man Delaney, he wants to wipe us from the hills. You bring her here. You put her in the center of his hate. I know the danger. Ethan said. His voice was low. Knowing is not enough. Chaitin said, what will you do when they come with ropes? Or with fire, will you hide behind your paper? Will you send her back to us? This was the test. Ethan felt the weight of the moment. He thought of his parents, their failure. He would not fail. Not this time. I cannot promise it will be easy. Ethan said. His voice was steady. I cannot promise they will not be afraid. I cannot promise your sister or her children will not be hurt. Chaitin, his eyes narrowed. But I promise this. Ethan continued. If they come, they will have to come through me. I will not send her back. I will stand in front of this house. I will protect her. I will protect those girls. With my life, that is my word, and my word does not burn. They stood frozen. The wind blew dust around their boots. Chaitin stared into his eyes. He was searching. He was weighing the man in front of him. Finally, he gave a short, sharp nod. Hos-ho, he said, a word of approval. He turned to his sister. He spoke in Apache. It was a short, fast exchange. Camilla nodded. Chaitin turned back to Ethan. You have a good word, but you are one man. We will be watching, not you. We will be watching the road to the town. He mounted his horse. The other two men had not moved. They were a silent, solid wall. Chaitin looked down at his sister. He looked at the girls. He turned his horse. The three men rode away. They disappeared back over the northern rise. The escort was gone, but the promise of their return hung in the air. Camilla let out a long breath. She had been holding it. She turned to Ethan. It is done. She looked at her daughters. Go, she said, motioning to the house. Chenoa, the older one, took Tianita her hand. They walked slowly toward the porch. They stopped at the door. They looked inside. Ethan watched them. He saw Chenoa, her eyes widen. She saw the bunk beds. She crept inside. She touched the wood. She looked at the yellow curtains. She looked at Ethan. The fear was still there, but the burning hate was gone. It was replaced by a deep, profound confusion. She did not understand. Tianita ran to the beds. She tried to climb the small ladder. Camilla walked past Ethan. She carried 2 bundles from her horse. She stepped into the cabin. It was her first time inside. She stopped. She looked at the clean floor, the full sacks of flour and beans, the curtains. Her eyes rested on the bunk beds. She said nothing. She put her bundles down. She walked to the center of the room. She closed her eyes. She bent down. She touched the floorboards with the palm of her hand. She whispered something, a word, a prayer, a welcome, a claim. It was a simple, quiet ritual. She was greeting the land. She was telling the spirits of the place that she was here. Then she opened her eyes. The moment was over. She looked at the kitchen. The stove is cold, she said. I can light it, Ethan stammered. I will light it, she said. She was not a guest. She was a partner. She moved to the wood box. She began to lay a fire. She saw his clumsily split wood. She did not comment. That evening, they ate the first meal. It was a strange and quiet event. Ethan sat at his one chair. Camilla and the girls sat on a bench he had built. He had made bacon and beans. Camilla had made fry bread, a flat, corn-based bread she cooked in his skillet. The smells mixed, salt pork and corn, the smell of his world, the smell of hers. They did not talk much. The children ate. They were hungry. After Kimela began to organize the kitchen. She did not ask. She just did it. She moved his flour sack. She put his few utensils in a different order. She had a small bag of herbs. She hung them from a rafter. The cabin began to smell different. It smelled like his cabin, but it also smelled like her. Ethan watched. He felt a deep, strange conflict. He was a man of precise habits. Everything had a place. His place. He had lived alone for so long. He did not know how to share space. He felt an urge to tell her, "No, the skillet goes there." But he held his tongue. He had to learn. This was what partnership meant. It was not just a paper. It was this. It was sharing the peg for the skillet. He was learning to listen. He was learning to make room. The next few days, a rhythm began, a fragile one. Ethan would rise early, as always, but when he came in from the barn, the fire was already lit. Kimela would be awake. There would be coffee. He began to teach Chenoa about the horses. She was afraid of Bounty. He was too big. Ethan brought out his old mare, gentle and slow. He showed her the curry comb. "Like this," he said. He moved his hand in circles on the horse her flank. "Slow. She likes it." Chenoa held the comb. She touched the horse. The horse turned her head. Chenoa flinched. She was ready to run. "She is just looking," Ethan said. "Show her your hand. Let her smell you." The girl held out her hand. The mare lipped at her palm. A small, tentative smile touched Chenoa her lips. It was gone in an instant, but he had seen it. The real change came at night, the third night. Ethan was asleep. He was a light sleeper. A sound woke him, a cough. He sat up. His heart was pounding. He thought of Delaney, his men. The sound came again. It was small. It was wet. It was a child choking. He swung his legs out of bed. He was in his small room. Kimela and the girls were in the main room. The cabin was one big space, divided by a hanging blanket. He heard Kimela, her voice, low, soothing, speaking in Apache. "The coughing got worse. It was a terrible, racking sound. It was Tianita." He pulled on his pants. He walked into the main room. The fire was low. Just embers. Kimela was holding Tianita. The little girl was struggling for breath. Her body was rigid with panic. "It is the smoke," Kimela said. Her voice was tight with fear. "It is still in her lungs. From the fire. It comes back at night." Ethan saw the terror in the child, her eyes. It was the same terror from the burning shack. She was reliving it. "Boil water," he said. He was fully awake. "Get steam." He took a small tin of salve from his shelf, the one his mother used. Peppermint and eucalyptus. "Put this in the water. It will open her chest." Kimela moved to the stove. Ethan sat on the bench. "Let me hold her," he said. Kimela hesitated. Tianita was gasping. She handed the child over. Ethan held the small, hot body. Tianita was rigid. He did not pat her. He did not shush her. He just held her, firmly, solidly. He put her head against his chest. "You are safe," he said. His voice was low. "The fire is gone. You are here. You are safe." He just repeated it. "You are safe." The water boiled. The cabin filled with a sharp, clean smell of mint. Kimela held the steaming bowl. Ethan held Tianita over it. The steam rose around her small face. The coughing began to ease. The gasps became deeper breaths. The small body in his arms began to relax. Her hand, which had been clenched into a fist, opened. It rested on his shirt. After an hour, she was asleep. Her breathing was heavy, but even Kimela was exhausted. "I will take her," she whispered. "No," Ethan said. "She is fine. You sleep. I will watch." Kimela looked at him. This white man, this stranger. He was holding her daughter. His bandaged hand was resting on her back. "Go on," he said. "Sleep. I will watch." She went to her bed. She did not sleep. She watched him. Ethan did not go back to his cot. He sat in his chair, the one by the table. He held Tianita. He sat there, upright. He did not move. He did not sleep. He watched the small girl breathe. He watched the embers in the stove. He sat watch. He held the post. He sat there until the sun came up. While Ethan sat watch, the town was stirring. Malcolm Delaney was not sleeping. He was in the private room of the saloon. He was not alone. The preacher was there, Mr. Harris, and 2 members of the town council. "It is an affront," Delaney said. He was not yelling. His voice was reasonable. "It is a moral failing. This man, Matthews, he has brought them to his home. He is living with them openly. It is a terrible example for the children of this town. It is against the word of God," the preacher said. He was a small, nervous man. He relied on Delaney, his donations. "The tribes of man are to be kept separate." "It is more than that," Delaney said. He leaned forward. "It is a danger. We all know the Apache. We know what they are capable of. Now they are on his land, a day's ride from our homes. How long before they are stealing cattle? How long before our women are not safe?" He looked at the council members. "I am a patient man, but I have a responsibility. To this town, to the good, tax-paying folks, I am offering a reward, $50, for any information at all, about crimes, old or new, committed by these, people. We need a legal reason. We need a way to show the marshal that this is a threat, that they must be removed, for the good of all." The council members nodded. $50 was a lot of money. The town was poor. People would talk. People would invent. Delaney had just lit a new fire. Back at the ranch, the sun was rising. Kimela got up. She saw Ethan. He was still in the chair. He was asleep. His head was slumped. Tianita was sleeping soundly on his chest. Kimela looked at them. She looked at her other daughter, Chenoa, safe in the new bed. She looked at the yellow curtains. The warm light filled the room. She felt a powerful, dangerous hope. This man, he was not like the others. He had not lied. He had not promised safety. He had promised to stand, and here he was. He was standing. But Kimela was not a fool. She had seen Delaney, her men. She had lived her whole life in the shadow of their hate. She walked to the cabin door. She looked out. The land was beautiful. It was peaceful. She knew it was a lie. She knew this was just the beginning. The hope in her heart was real, but so was the fear. The war was coming, and it was coming to this small house. The fragile quiet of the ranch lasted 4 days. It was a strange, new kind of quiet. It was not the silence of one man, but the shared space of 4 people learning to live. Ethan would mend a harness on the porch, his good hand clumsy but determined. He would listen to the sound of Kimela, her voice inside, teaching Chenoa the English names for the herbs she was drying. He would see Tianita, her fear of him almost gone, trying to copy his walk as she followed the chickens. This new quiet was shattered by the old, loud noise of the town. In 3 Rivers, the saloon was the heart of the debate. Malcolm Delaney, his petition was on the bar. It was a long document, full of words like moral hygiene and community safety and racial integrity. It called for the town council to pass an ordinance forbidding the cohabitation of white settlers and undomiciled natives within 10 miles of the town limits. It was aimed at one man. "It's just not right," the preacher, Mr. Harris, said to a group of men. "It's an affront to God. He's endangering us all." "I do not know," Silas, a small farmer with a weathered face, said quietly. He was drinking a warm beer. "Matthews has always been a straight man. He minds his own, and I heard he pulled those children from a fire. That's how they get you." One of Delaney, his foreman, snapped. His name was Cale. He's soft in the head, And now he's got a house full of them. How long before their men come? How long before our cattle go missing?" "My cattle are already missing," another man grumbled. But he was looking at Delaney, his foreman, not at the idea of the Apache. Delaney sat at his table, watching. The $50 reward for information was working. People were remembering all sorts of things. An Apache man seen near a lame horse 5 years ago. A strange sound in the night. It was all adding up. "It is not just the petition. Friends," Delaney said, his voice smooth and reasonable. "We have a duty to protect all parties, even the unfortunate. I have it on good authority that this woman and her children are not there by choice, that they are being held captives. A man in Matthews, his lonely position, might become desperate." This was a new, uglier idea. It shifted Ethan from a fool to a criminal. "The deputy should look into that," Delaney said, looking at the preacher. "A welfare check, for the poor woman, her sake." The wind gusted. It blew open the saloon doors. A cloud of red dust and old paper swirled down the main street. It was a dry, angry wind. The social storm was making landfall. 2 days later, they came to the ranch. Ethan was on the porch, trying to rebraid a lariat with his left hand. His burned hand was still heavily bandaged, but the throbbing had eased. Kimela was inside. He could smell beans and cornbread. The children were playing in the shade of the cabin. He saw the riders, 2 of them. His hand stopped. His body went still. It was Deputy Miller, a young man who wore his badge with a mix of pride and fear. And beside him was Cale, Delaney, his foreman. Cale was not wearing a badge. He was just wearing a gun. Ethan stood up. He did not move from the porch. Kimela came to the door. She stood beside him, not behind him. Chenoa and Tianita ran to her. They hid in her skirts. Miller and Cale dismounted. Miller looked hot. He looked uncomfortable. Cale looked like he was enjoying himself. "Afternoon, Ethan," Miller said. He kept his hand near his belt. "Deputy, Cale." Ethan, his voice was flat. "We are here on official business. Ethan," Miller said. He cleared his throat. We have received reports, concerns from citizens about the welfare of the occupants here." "They are not occupants, Deputy," Ethan said. "This is their home. They are my partners." Cale laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Partners, that's a good one." Miller shot him a nervous look. "Be that as it may, the report says you are holding them against their will, that they are your prisoners." Ethan felt the blood rush to his head. He felt the old, sick feeling of failure. He was not protecting them. He was a magnet for this trouble. He was too small, too weak. His past was his present. He saw his father, his slumped shoulders. Defeated. He was not good enough. He was not strong enough to protect a home. He was about to yell. He was about to order them off his land. He was about to make it worse. Before he could speak, Kimela stepped forward. She was not angry. Her face was calm. Her back was straight. She stepped past Ethan onto the top step of the porch. "Deputy Miller," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it was clear. It cut through the hot, tense air. Miller was startled. He had been addressing Ethan. He looked at Kimela. Cale stopped smiling. "My name is Kimela," she said, as if speaking to a child. "These are my children, Chenoa and Tianita. We are not prisoners." She looked directly into the deputy. His eyes, her gaze was level. It was powerful. It held no fear. "My daughters were in a burning building. We were visiting. The fire came. This man, Ethan Matthews, ran into that fire. He pulled my children out. He burned his hand." She nodded at Ethan, his bandage. "He saved their lives. I came to him, as is the way of my people, to honor the debt. It was my choice to come here. It was my offer to join our lives and make one home. The deputy was speechless. He was a young man from Ohio. He knew about property law and disorderly conduct. He knew nothing about this. He did not want a servant, Camilla continued. Her voice was strong. He did not want a captive. He said it must be by your laws. He said we must be partners, equals. He rode to your town. He had a paper made, a legal paper, to protect me, to protect my children. She turned her head to Ethan. Show him the paper. Ethan. Ethan was frozen. He was watching her. She was not a victim. She was a shield. She was defending him. She was defending the home he had failed to protect. His shame was so deep. It was a new kind of pain. It was mixed with a powerful, burning admiration. She was stronger than he would ever be. He fumbled in his shirt pocket. He pulled out the folded document from Amos Keller. He stepped forward. He handed it to the deputy. Miller unfolded it. His eyes scanned the page. He was not a lawyer, but he saw the words. Partnership agreement. Joint tenancy. Camilla. Chenoa. Tianita. And at the bottom, the unmistakable, spidery signature of Amos Keller. This was real. This is a legal document, Miller stammered. That's just a piece of paper, Cale snarled. He was furious. This was not going to plan. He probably forced her to sign it. Ask her if she's free to go. Miller looked trapped. He turned back to Camilla. Ma'am, I have to ask, are you here of your own free will? Are you free to leave if you choose? Camilla gave a small, sad smile. It was a smile of pity. I am Apache. Deputy, I am always free. I am here because I choose to be. Because this man, this stranger, sat up all night and held my daughter in his arms when she was sick from the smoke. Because he built beds for them with his own hands. Her gaze hardened. It was like black ice. This is my home. This is my choice. Now, I will ask you a question. Are you a free man, Deputy Miller, or did Malcolm Delaney send you here to do his dirty work? The air went dead. The accusation was perfect. It was true. Miller, his face went from pale to a deep, blotchy red. Cale put his hand on the butt of his pistol. That's enough, Miller snapped. He was humiliated. He had come to investigate a crime and had been exposed as a pawn. There are no captives here. Cale, we're done. The hell we are, Cale said. This ain't over, not by a long shot. He stared at Camilla. It was a look of pure, concentrated venom. He spat into the dust of the yard. Now, Cale, Miller ordered. He was angry now. He was angry at Delaney. He was angry at Cale. He was angry at himself. Cale turned. He ripped his horse, his reins free. He swung into the saddle. Miller took a moment. He looked at Camilla. He tipped his hat. It was a small, confused gesture of respect. Ma'am, Mr. Matthews. He mounted up. They rode away, their horses kicking up dust. Ethan and Camilla stood on the porch. The silence they left behind was deafening. Ethan, his hands were shaking. He felt sick. You should not have had to do that, he whispered. His voice was hoarse. That was my fight. He came for me. I just stood there. Camilla turned to him. She looked at his face. She saw the shame. She saw the conflict. No, she said. Her voice was soft, but firm. He did not come for you. He came for us. This is our home. Not your home, our home. We stand together. You built the walls. I will also defend them. She put her hand on his good arm. It was not a caress. It was a grip, the grip of a partner. But this is not the end. You saw his eyes. Delaney failed. Now he will be more dangerous. Ethan looked at her. He nodded. The shame was still there, but it was not failure. It was just a fact. She was stronger than he was. He would have to learn to be as strong as her. The news hit Three Rivers like a thunderclap. Deputy Miller, humiliated, told the story with a new anger. He told how Camilla had faced them down. He told about Keller, his legal paper. He told how Cale had threatened her. The saloon was divided. By God, she has spirit. Silas, the farmer, said. This time, he was not whispering. And Matthews did it legal. He went to Keller. He's trying to do it right.
He's a fool,
another man shouted.
and he's made Delaney mad. That's bad for all of us.
When Malcolm Delaney heard the report, he was not in the saloon. He was in his office at the cattle yard. He listened to Cale, his angry, edited version. He listened in silence. The legal trap had failed. The social pressure had failed. Camilla, her dignity, had turned the town against itself. He stood up. He walked to the window. He looked out over his dusty cattle pens. He had tried the law. He had tried public opinion. All right, he said, his voice quiet, a quiet, cold rage. If he wants to live like an Apache, he can learn to live without a white man his water. He turned to Cale. The petition is done. The law is useless. We'll hit him where he lives. He has a small herd. He has a well. He needs his trough. I want you to take 2 men. Tonight, I want you to fix his water problem permanently. That night, the ranch was dark. A sliver of moon gave no light. 3 riders moved like ghosts. They did not go near the house. They went to the pasture. They found the large water trough that Ethan, his small herd of cattle, relied on. They had axes. They were not quiet. They were efficient. The sound of splintering wood carried on the night air, but it was too far from the house. Inside, no one heard. They smashed the trough. They ripped the feed pipe from the well. They dug up the connection. The precious water gurgled out. It soaked into the dry, thirsty ground. In 10 minutes, it was done. The splintered wood was all that was left. The next morning, Ethan woke to a new sound. It was not a cough. It was not the wind. It was the low, desperate bawling of thirsty animals. He pulled on his boots. He walked out into the gray dawn. He saw it, the wreckage, the dark, muddy patch of earth that was already drying. His cattle were huddled around it, bawling. Camilla came to stand beside him. She held a shawl around her shoulders. She saw the splinters. She saw the thirsty cows. She looked at Ethan. He has started, she said. Ethan looked at the destroyed trough. He looked at the hot, merciless sky. The drought was absolute. Water was life, and Delaney had just cut his throat. Yes, Ethan said. His voice was cold.
The war is here.
Ethan stared at the splinters of his water trough. The wood was sharp, like broken bones. The ground was a dark, muddy scar in the dawn light. It was already beginning to dry. The bawling of his 30 head of cattle was a sound of pure misery. It was a thirsty, desperate sound. Camilla stood beside him. She held a blanket around her shoulders. The children were on the porch, their faces small and afraid. He has broken us, Ethan said. His voice was hollow. He was a man of plans. He knew how to fix a fence. He knew how to mend tack. He did not know how to fix this. A herd needed water. He could haul buckets from the house well for a day. 2 days, but it would not be enough. The drought was a hammer. Delaney had just delivered the final blow. No, Camilla said. Her voice was quiet, but fierce. He has not broken us. He has hurt us. We will move the herd to the South Creek. There is sometimes water trapped in the rocks. Ethan shook his head. That is too close to his land. That is what he wants. He will claim we are rustling or trespassing. It is that, or they die, she said simply. Before he could answer, another shadow fell over them. A new rider? He came from the north, fast. It was Chaitin. He pulled his horse to a sliding stop. He had seen the destroyed trough from the ridge. His face was a mask of cold fury. He was here, Chaitin said. It was not a question. Oh, last night, Ethan said. Chaitin looked at the thirsty cattle. Then he looked to the west. The sky was not blue. It was not the gray of morning. It was a sick, yellow color. A low, brown line was on the horizon. It was moving. "We have no time." Chiton said, "A storm is coming. A dry one. A windstorm." Ethan looked. The yellow line was thicker. It was a wall of dust. "The cattle," he said, the panic rising in his throat. "If they are in the open when it hits, they will scatter. They will run until they die." Chiton finished. "We must get them into the ravine, now." "The children," Kimala said. She ran to the porch. "Chenoa, Tianita, inside the house. Bolt the door. Put the blankets under the door. Do not come out. No matter what you hear, do not come out." The girls scrambled inside. The fear in their mother, her voice was more frightening than the sky. Kimela turned. She was not going inside. She ran to her own Mustang. She swung herself onto its back. She was a partner. This was her herd too. "We have to move," Ethan yelled. The wind was already picking up. It was not a breeze. It was a hot, angry shove. It carried the taste of grit. The three of them rode. Ethan, Chiton, and Kimela. They spread out behind the agitated cattle. The animals were terrified. They smelled the dust. They were half mad with thirst.
"Yah!"
Ethan screamed, his voice raw. He cracked his rope. "Move!" They got the herd moving. A slow, lumbering mass of panic. They were pushing them toward a small box canyon a half-mile from the house. It was their only hope of containing them. Then the wall hit. It was not like night. It was like being buried. The sun vanished. The world disappeared in a solid, screaming cloud of brown. The wind was a physical thing. It was 1,000 needles on his skin. It was a roar that swallowed all other sound. He could not see his horse, his head. He could only feel the panicked movement beneath him. He pulled his neckerchief over his face. He was breathing dust. He heard a sound, a new sound, a crack. He thought it was a tree, but there were no trees. Another crack, and another. It was gunfire. Through the howling, swirling dust, he saw them. Shadows, 2 riders. They were firing pistols into the air. They were on the far side of the herd. They were not trying to help. They were turning the stampede. They were pushing the cattle away from the ravine. They were pushing them toward the open prairie, toward the cliffs to the south. It was Cale. It had to be. Delaney, his men? They were using the storm as cover. "No," Ethan roared. He spurred Bounty. He rode blind into the chaos. He was not a fighter. He was a rancher, and they were destroying his life. He was riding on pure, unthinking rage. He saw a shape, a man. He raised his pistol. He was no longer trying to scare the cattle. He was aiming at Chiton. "Chiton!" Ethan yelled. Chiton turned. The bullet went wide. Chiton raised his own rifle, but the shadow was gone, swallowed by the dust. The world was chaos. Cattle were screaming. The ground was shaking. Ethan was separated from the others. He was lost. "Kimala!" he yelled. "Chiton!" He saw a figure. Cale. The man was on his horse, not 10 yards away. He was reloading his pistol. He saw Ethan. A look of surprised hatred crossed his face. He dropped the pistol. He reached for the rifle in his saddle scabbard. This was not about cattle anymore. Cale raised the rifle. He was taking his time. Even in the storm, he was going to murder him. Ethan was frozen. His horse was bucking. He was trying to pull his own pistol. His bandaged hand was useless. He was too slow. "Ethan!" He heard her scream. It was from his left. He did not have time to turn. Her black Mustang slammed into Bounty. It was a full-body collision. The impact was brutal. Kimela had thrown her horse, and herself, directly at him. The rifle shot cracked. The bullet screamed past, exactly where his chest had been 1 second before. He was thrown from the saddle. Kimela was thrown too. They hit the hard, unforgiving ground. They rolled. The world was a painful, brown tumble. He landed on his back. The wind was knocked out of him. He gasped, breathing in a lungful of sand. Camilla was beside him. She was not moving. She was on her face. "Camilla!" He crawled to her. He rolled her over. She cried out, a high, thin sound of pure agony. She was clutching her left shoulder. He was aiming," she gasped. Her face was white, white with pain, white with dust. "You saved me," he whispered. He was stunned. He looked at her shoulder. It was wrong. The shape was wrong. Dislocated. She had taken the fall for him. Chiton was there. He appeared like a ghost from the dust. His face was a mask of fury. His rifle was up. "They are gone," he said. "They ran." The wind was still screaming, but the force was fading. The world was changing. And, as if a curtain had been lifted, the wind died. It did not taper off. It stopped. The brown cloud began to settle. The silence was as shocking as the noise had been. The sun was still hidden, but light was returning. A gray, sick light. The ground was scoured. The cattle were gone. All of them. Ethan pushed himself to his knees. He was a man in a desert. He had nothing. His herd was gone. His partner was injured. He had failed. He had failed them all. He heard horses, a slow, deliberate walk. He looked up. Through the settling dust, they came Malcolm Delaney. He was on his fine black thoroughbred. He was flanked by 4 of his men, and beside him, looking sick, was Deputy Miller. Delaney looked around. He saw the empty pasture. He saw Ethan kneeling in the dirt. He saw Camilla on the ground, holding her arm. He saw Chiton standing over them, a rifle in his hand. Delaney, his face was a mask of false concern. "Mr. Matthews, a terrible, terrible tragedy." Ethan got to his feet. He was shaking. It was not from fear. It was from a rage so pure. It was almost ice. "You did this." "I did nothing," Delaney said smoothly. He gestured to Chiton. "My men saw it all. They saw this man firing his rifle, driving your herd. They tried to stop him. A terrible business. When the natives get riled up, well, it was the perfect lie. Cale and his men had been the setup. Delaney was the conclusion. "Deputy Miller," Delaney said, his voice hardening. "You see the proof. This situation is volatile. This man is a danger. The woman is injured. This experiment is over. For the good of the community. For their own safety. You will escort these Apache back to the reservation. Now." Deputy Miller looked at the ground. He looked at Ethan. "Ethan, I think he is right. This has gone too far. People are getting shot. Property is destroyed. I cannot protect you. This has to end." This was it. The moment of his failure. The end of the farm in Missouri. The end of the ranch in 3 Rivers. He had lost. He had lost it all. He looked at Delaney, the man, his confident smile. He looked at the deputy, the man, his weak, averted gaze. Then he looked at Camilla. She was pushing herself up. Chiton was helping her. She was biting her lip so hard it was bleeding. But her eyes? Her eyes were on Ethan. They were not pleading. They were not afraid. They were watching. They were waiting. He saw the cabin. He saw the small, terrified faces of Chenoa and Tayanita pressed against the window. A strange calm settled over him. The shaking stopped. The fear was gone. He finally understood. His father had failed because he had given up. Ethan would not. He turned to face Delaney. His voice was not loud. It was as clear and cold as the air after the storm. "No." Delaney, his smile wavered. "What did you say?" "I said no," Ethan repeated. He took a step toward Delaney, his horse. "She is not going anywhere. This is her home." "Matthews, be sensible." The deputy began. "You be sensible." "Deputy," Ethan snapped. "You see a man with a rifle. I see the man who saved my life. You see an injured woman. I see the partner who just took a bullet for me." He pointed a shaking, dust-covered finger at Delaney. "He did this. He destroyed my trough. He sent his men to stampede my herd. He told them to shoot us. He told them to frame Chiton." "That is a wild accusation," Delaney sneered. "You have no proof." "I do not need proof," Ethan said. He was walking forward. He did not care about the guns. "I am telling you, as the man who lives here, this is my partner. These are my children. This is my family. And you will not touch them." He stopped at Delaney, his stirrup. He looked up at the powerful man. "You wanted my choice. Here it is. I choose them. I choose this family. Now, get off my land." The world was silent. Delaney, his face was dark red. He was not used to being defied. He was about to give an order. His men tensed. "I am afraid he is right. Mr. Delaney." The voice was thin. It was dry. It was Amos Keller. The old lawyer was riding up in his small buggy. It looked absurd. A town buggy in a field of ruin. He looked as calm as if he were in his office. Keller Delaney roared. "What is this? This is not your affair." "It is. I am afraid," Keller said. He held up a piece of paper. "This is an order. From the district court. Not the town. It is a restraining order. Forbidding you, or your employees, from harassing, threatening, or interfering with Mr. Matthews or his legal partners." "That paper is meaningless," Delaney said. "Is it?" Keller asked. "It has the signature of a federal judge. And I have something else. I have a sworn statement." He held up a second paper. "From a young man, a man named Jeb. He was one of your riders. He was there last night. He swears you paid him and Cale $20 to destroy the water trough. He got scared. He thought Cale was going to kill someone. He rode to me an hour ago." One of the men behind Delaney, a young cowboy, looked like he was going to be sick. Delaney was trapped. The lie had collapsed. Deputy Miller saw his chance. He was no longer Delaney, his man. He was an officer of the law, and a federal judge was now involved. His spine stiffened. "Malcolm Delaney," Miller said, his voice clear. "You are under arrest for destruction of property and conspiracy to commit violence." Delaney stared. He was a bull. He had been roped. His men were backing their horses away. They would not fight the district court. "This is not over, Matthews," Delaney hissed. His voice was poison. "It is for today, Mr. Delaney," Miller said. He pulled his pistol. "Get your hands up. Slowly." Ethan watched them ride away. Delaney in front, the deputy behind him. It was a long, slow procession. The dust was settling. The air was becoming cleaner. He looked up. The wall of cloud was gone. The sky above was a deep, impossible blue. It was scoured. It was clean. He took off his hat. He slapped it against his thigh. A cloud of brown dust exploded from the felt. He put it back on. He turned. Camilla was standing, supported by her brother. The children were running from the house, crying, scrambling over the ruined ground to get to her. Ethan walked to her. He did not stop. He put his good arm around her. He took her weight from Chiton. She gasped, the pain in her shoulder blinding her. "You are hurt," he said softly. "It is my shoulder," she breathed. Her face was buried in his dusty shirt. "I know," he said. "I can fix it. It will hurt once, and then it will be better." He looked into her eyes. They were full of pain and something else. Trust. "You are my family," he said again. He was not saying it for Delaney. He was saying it for her. She nodded, biting her lip. "We are one," she whispered. He braced himself. He held her. He did not hesitate. He set the joint. A quick, sharp, terrible movement. She screamed. A short, sharp sound, and then a long, shuddering sigh of relief. The pain was different now. It was a dull ache, not a fire. She did not pull away. She leaned on him. He held her. The children were clinging to them both. Chaitan stood guard. They were a strange, broken, exhausted group. They had lost their cattle. They had lost their peace. But they were standing, together, in the clean, quiet air, on their own land. Chaitan had stayed for 2 hours. He stayed until Camilla, her arm was bound. He stayed until the children were calm. He had walked the perimeter of the small, ruined ranch. He saw the tracks. He saw the destroyed trough. He said nothing. He simply observed. Finally, he came to the porch. Ethan was sitting on the steps, his head in his good hand. Camilla was in the chair, her face pale with pain, but her eyes were clear. He will be back. Chaitan said to Ethan, "I know," Ethan said, not looking up. "You have no cattle. You have no water for them. He has won this." "He has not won," Camilla said from the chair. Her voice was thin, but sharp. Chaitan looked at his sister. He saw the set of her jaw. He saw the way she looked at the man on the steps. He nodded. "Once. I will watch from the hills," he said. He mounted his horse. He rode away into the dusk. He did not look back. The silence that he left was vast. The world was scoured. The wind was gone. There was no sound, not a bird, not a cricket, just the immense, bruised quiet of the high plains after the storm. Ethan went inside. He lit the stove. The fire was a small rebellion against the cold that was coming. The house was dark. The children were already asleep. They had cried themselves into an exhausted, deep sleep. They were huddled together in the bottom bunk bed, 2 small shapes under a blanket. The cabin was quiet, but it was not calm. The memory of the day was a living thing in the room. The scream of the wind, the crack of Cale, his rifle, the solid, sickening impact when Camilla hit him, the final, silent confrontation. Their hearts were still pounding. They were still breathing dust. Ethan made coffee. He had no other comfort to offer. He handed a tin cup to Camilla. She took it with her good hand. She was sitting on the bench. He sat in his chair. The small stove fire was the only light. It painted moving shadows on the walls. For a long time, they just sat. They listened to the children breathe. They listened to the fire crackle. Ethan finally spoke. His voice was a low rasp. "He was right. You know, Chaitan, I am ruined. The cattle are gone. The trough is gone. I have nothing left to build with." Camilla did not answer immediately. She sipped her coffee. Ethan leaned forward. He rested his elbows on his knees. He stared into the fire. "When I saw Delaney, when he was sitting there on his horse, so sure, and Deputy Miller just folding, all I could think of was Missouri. He had not spoken of Missouri to anyone, not ever. 'My father,' he said. His voice was thick. He was a good man. He worked hard, but he was not strong. A drought came, and a man like Delaney, not his name, but his kind. He wanted our land. He squeezed my father. He used the bank. He used the law. My father, he just broke. He gave up. We lost everything. He died a year later. A hollow man." He looked at his own hands. The bandaged one. The one that was raw from work. "Today, when Delaney was there, I felt it. The same hollow feeling. I failed. I brought you here. I made promises. And I failed. I am not worthy of this, of you. I am my father, his son." The confession hung in the air. It was his deepest shame, the secret engine of his loneliness. He had run to this empty land to prove he was not his father, and today he had proven that he was. Camilla set her cup down. She stood up, wincing as her shoulder moved. She walked the few steps to his chair. He did not look up. He could not. He was ashamed. She did not sit. She stood over him. She looked down at the top of his head. He was a man drowning in a memory. "I will tell you what I see," she said. Her voice was soft. It was not the voice of the warrior on the porch. It was something else. I see the man who went into the fire. My husband. He would have done that, but he is dead. You are here. She moved. She knelt in front of him. It was a painful, awkward movement with her bound arm. She was now at his level. He was forced to look at her. I see the man who built beds for my children. I see the man who sat in a chair all night, holding my daughter, so she could breathe. Her good hand, her right hand, came up. She did not touch his face. She touched the clumsy bandage on his right hand. Her fingers were light. They traced the outline of the cloth. She could feel the heat of the wound through it. From Camilla, her view, this was not a mark of failure. This was the mark of the beginning. This was the proof. This was the first price he had paid. My people believe spirits guide us. She whispered, "When I first saw you, I thought the spirits had sent me a protector. I was afraid. I thought they had sent me another master. But I was wrong. They did not send me a master, and they did not send me a protector." She looked at his burned hand, and then up into his eyes. "They sent me a partner. You are not your father, Ethan Matthews. Your father gave up, today, in the dust. When you had lost everything, you stood up. You did not fight for your land. You did not fight for your cattle. You fought for us. You told that man that we were your family." His wall of self-doubt, the wall he had built for 10 years, it did not just crumble. It was gone. He was seeing himself through her eyes. Not a failure, not a hollow man, just a man who had stood. He let out a long, ragged breath. It was a sob, but it had no sound. It was just the release of a decade of grief. His good hand, his left hand, came up. It was shaking. He touched her face. He traced the line of her cheekbone. It was damp with her sweat. It was streaked with the dust of the storm. She was the most beautiful thing he had not known he was looking for. He leaned forward. Slowly, he was asking permission. She did not move. She just watched him. She met his gaze. He kissed her. It was not a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of simple, profound relief. It was slow. It was chaste. It was the taste of coffee and dust and salt. It was two survivors. It was a promise sealed in the ruins of their day. He pulled back. He just looked at her. "We are one," he whispered. It was what she had said. "We are one," she agreed. He pulled her closer, gently. He was mindful of her shoulder. He held her. It was not the desperate embrace of the storm. It was an embrace of commitment. She rested her head against his chest. He could feel her heart. It was beating. Steady. He rested his cheek on the top of her hair. It smelled of wood smoke. They stayed like that, quiet. The fire burned low. The children slept. The house was safe. After a long time, he stirred. He looked at his small, cold cot in the corner of his partitioned room. He looked at her bedroll, laid out near the children. He stood, helping her to her feet. He walked to his cot. He took his one thick wool blanket, the one his mother had made. He brought it back. He laid it on the bench. He went to her bedroll. He unstrapped her woven Apache blanket. It was bright, patterns of red and black. He laid it on top of the plain, gray wool of the east, the strong, bright pattern of the mesas. They were together. "One blanket is not warm enough," he said, "for the winter that is coming, but two, together, they will be." She looked at the two blankets, layered as one. She understood. He turned to her. He was terrified. This was harder than facing Delaney. "Camilla," he said. His voice was rough. "When you came here, you spoke of a debt. You spoke of a law. I said it had to be a choice." "Yes," she said. "And today, I told Delaney my choice. But I was not finished. A paper from Mr. Keller, living in the same house. It is not enough." He took a breath. I do not want a partner just on paper. I do not want a partner just to fight a storm. I want to build a life. With you, with the girls. I want to marry you. He rushed on, afraid she would misunderstand. Not because of the fire, not because of any debt, not because of what you offered, because this house was just a box of wood. It was an empty shell. And now it is a home. You made it a home. I do not think I can live in that empty box again. I want to build this home. With you, properly. Camilla looked at him. This quiet, broken, strong man. She saw the fear in his eyes, the fear that she would say no. A slow, warm smile spread across her face. It was the first true, unguarded smile he had ever seen from her. It was strong. It was gentle. It lit up the dark room. She put her good hand on his chest, right over his heart. Ethan Matthews, she said softly. You asked to build a home. We have already begun. The walls are standing. She nodded toward the sleeping children. And the foundation is strong. She raised herself slightly. She kissed him. This time, it was her choice. Yes, we will marry. He held her. He felt a peace he had never known, a rightness. But the moment, as perfect as it was, could not last. The world was still outside. Delaney, he said, his voice muffled in her hair. He is in the town jail, but he will not stay there. Camilla's smile faded. She did not pull away, but she was a realist. No, she said. The deputy is a weak man. Delaney, his money is strong. That paper from the judge. It will stop his guns, but it will not stop him. He will try to starve us. Ethan said it was a fact, not a fear. We have no herd, she agreed. We have flour. We have beans. We have what we can hunt. But winter is coming. He will try to stop us from buying feed. He will try to stop us from selling whatever we have left. She looked at him. The partnership was already at work. It is not over. He has only changed his weapon, from fire to money. Let him, Ethan said. He held her. He felt the warmth of her body. He felt the small, sleeping breaths of the children in the room. He was not alone. He was not his father. Let him try. We are a family. We will find a way. The decision to marry was made in the quiet of the ruined ranch. The decision to act on it was made the next morning. They would not wait. They had stood against the storm and the guns. They would stand against the whispers of the town. They would have both, the law of the spirits and the law of the courthouse. They held the first wedding on the land. It was not a celebration. It was a consecration. Chiton came down from the hills. He was their only witness. Camilla wore a buckskin dress, one she had kept tied in her bundles. It was soft and smelled of sage. Ethan wore his one clean shirt, the one he had bought for his trip to Keller, his office. His bandaged hand was a stark white against the blue fabric. They stood on the porch, the one he had built alone, the one she had defended, Chenoa and Tianita. Their hair brushed, stood beside their mother. Chiton lit a small fire of sweetgrass. He spoke in the Apache language. His voice was low, rhythmic. He was not speaking to Ethan or Camilla. He was speaking to the earth beneath their feet, to the wide, scoured sky above them. He was telling the world that this man and this woman were one. He was binding them to the land, and the land to them. When it was over, there was no kiss. Camilla and Ethan simply looked at each other. It was a bond. It was done. The second wedding was harder. It required the town. Amos Keller arrived in his buggy, just as he said he would. He had seen the destroyed trough. He had seen the tracks of the lost herd. His face was grim. The order will keep him from his guns, Keller said, helping Camilla into the buggy. Her arm was in a sling, a clean white cloth against the buckskin. But it will not make him kind. Are you sure about this? We are sure, Ethan said. He lifted Tianita and Chenoa into the back. The girls held a small, tight bunch of wildflowers they had picked from the creek bed. Ethan sat beside Camilla. They rode into Three Rivers. It was the longest ride of his life. The town was silent, but this was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of awe and confusion and a deep, grudging respect. The story of the confrontation had spread like fire. It had been told by Deputy Miller, who was shamed. It had been told by Jeb, the young cowboy, who was terrified. The town now knew. They knew about the fire. They knew about the legal paper. They knew about the destroyed trough. And they knew that Ethan Matthews, the quiet man, had not backed down. They knew his Apache partner had taken a fall for him. They walked up the steps of the courthouse. People watched from behind curtains. Men on the boardwalk stopped talking, but they did not sneer. They just watched. Inside, the circuit judge was waiting. He was a hard man who had seen too much. He looked at the strange group, the quiet rancher, the Apache woman with her arm in a sling, the two dark-eyed children clinging to her. Amos Keller. Mr. Keller, the judge said, this is highly irregular. The papers are in order, Your Honor. Keller said. The judge read the license. He looked at Ethan. Son, you know what this means. In this territory. I know, Ethan said. His voice was steady. And you, ma'am, he said to Camilla. I know, Camilla said. Her voice was as clear as his. The judge sighed. He was not paid to judge hearts. He was paid to judge law. Then let us get to it. The ceremony was 5 minutes. It was dry words. To have and to hold, in sickness and in health. Chenoa and Tianita stepped forward. They did not throw the flowers. They shyly handed the small, wilting bouquet to their mother. I pronounce you man and wife, the judge said. He sounded tired. Ethan turned to Camilla. He did not kiss her, not here, not for them. He simply took her good hand. They walked out of the courthouse. They were married. They were legal. Malcolm Delaney was out of jail in a day. He had paid his fine. He had paid it with a smile. The restraining order was a piece of paper. The arrest was an embarrassment, but he was a man who thought in seasons, not in days. The law had failed him. Now he would use the real law. The law of commerce. The law of winter. Ethan had lost his herd. He had no money. He had a family to feed. He had his land. He had his hands. He and Chiton, who now spent half his time at the ranch, had rebuilt the trough. But they had no cattle to water. They had a few chickens, the horses, and a milk cow. Ethan needed seed. He needed oats. He needed flour and salt. He went to town. He went to the feed store first. The owner, Mr. Henderson, was sweeping. Ethan, he said, not meeting his eye. I need 6 bags of oats. I can pay half now. The rest when I cannot, Ethan, Henderson said. His voice was low. I am sorry. My freight contract. It is up for review. With Mr. Delaney, his company, he has made it clear. Any sales to you, and my contract is void. I cannot risk it. I have a family. Ethan stared. I understand. He said he did not. He went to the general store. Mistress Avery was behind the counter. She had always been kind. Mistress Avery, I need flour and salt. She looked pained. Her face was pale. Ethan, I cannot extend credit, not right now. I'm not asking for credit, he said, though he knew he would need it soon. He put his last few coins on the counter. She looked at the coins. My supplier, from the capital. He is reviewing all my accounts. He is worried about the stability of this town. He said Mr. Delaney told him there was an Indian problem, that my store was at risk. He is cutting my shipments in half. I have to save what I have for my paying customers. I am sorry. He was not a customer. He was a pariah. He went to the blacksmith. "Gunner." He had brought 2 finely mended harnesses. "Gunner, can you buy these? I did good work." Gunner, a giant of a man, held the leather. He looked at the fine, even stitching Ethan had done with his one good hand. "It is good work, Ethan, it is fine work, but I cannot buy it." "Why?" "Delaney," Gunner said. He spat. "He owns the grazing rights on the North Range. He told every rancher, anyone who buys from me, if I do business with you, loses their rights. They will not buy my horseshoes. Ethan, they will not buy my plows. He is choking me, to choke you." Ethan stood on the dusty street. He was locked out. Delaney had built a wall around him, a wall of fear. He had no gun. He did not need one. He was strangling them. Slowly, legally. Winter was 2 months away. They would starve. The news of it? The quiet, polite, and absolute refusal of the town to sell to Ethan Matthews spread. The men in the saloon who had once admired his stand were now quiet again. Delaney had won. But he had not counted on the ones who had nothing left to lose. Silas, the small farmer, heard the story. He had a small spread. He was always in debt. Delaney, his bank, held his note. He had been afraid all his life. But he had heard Camilla, her voice on the courthouse steps. He had seen the way Ethan had faced down Delaney. That night, Silas did not go to the saloon. He went to the smithy. Gunner was closing up. "He is trying to starve them," Silas said. "He is trying to starve us all," Gunner said, his voice a low rumble. "He has me by the throat." "He has one throat," Silas said. "But we are, 20, 30, small men, farmers, tinkers. He has us all one by one. What if we were not one by one?" "What are you saying?" "I am saying," Silas said, "that I am tired of being afraid. I am going to Mistress Avery, her store. I am going to talk to her." They held a meeting. It was not in the town hall. It was in the back room of the general store. It was lit by one lantern. Silas was there. Gunner, Mistress Avery, Deputy Miller, who was sick with his own shame. He was not wearing his badge. 4 other small ranchers, men who hated Delaney, were there. "He is choking us," Mistress Avery said. "He controls the freight. He controls the bank. He is strangling Ethan to teach us a lesson." "So what do we do?" a rancher asked. "We stop using his freight line," Mistress Avery said. Her eyes were bright. "My cousin is in Kansas City. He can get us a better price. On everything, if we buy together. One large order. We pool our money. We pay for our own wagon. We bypass Delaney. We bypass his suppliers. We buy for all of us, including Ethan." It was a rebellion. A quiet, commercial rebellion. "He will call in our notes," Silas said. "He will ruin us." "He is already ruining us," Gunnar said. "I would rather be ruined standing up. I am in." "I am in," Silas said. I can make sure the freight wagon is not unnecessarily delayed by the law," Deputy Miller whispered. They made a pact. They formed a cooperative. Delaney heard about it within a day. He was furious. This was not just about Matthews. This was about his control. He called a town meeting. He would crush this. He would use the one thing they were all afraid of, the law. The town hall was packed. It was hot. It was tense. Delaney stood at the front. The preacher, Mr. Harris, was beside him. "Friends," Delaney started, his voice full of false concern. "I have called you here because our community is at risk, from unstable ventures, from financial risks that threaten us all." He proposed a new ordinance, a town business standards board. It would have the power to regulate all trade, to approve all suppliers, to ensure stability. It was a law to make his monopoly absolute. He finished his speech. The room was silent. Everyone knew what this was. "Are there any objections?" the council had asked. "I object." Ethan stood up. He walked to the front. Camilla was with him. Her arm was still in a sling, but she walked with her head high. Silas, Gunnar, and Mistress Avery stood up. They walked to the front. They stood behind Ethan. "This is not about stability, Mr. Delaney." Ethan said, "This is about control. You could not force me off my land. You could not scare me with guns. So now you are trying to starve me. And you are trying to punish my friends." "Your friends," Delaney sneered. "These are malcontents. And you have brought this on yourself, living in sin with a—" He did not finish. Camilla stepped forward. She stood in the center of the room. She was not angry. Her voice was clear. It was the same voice that had shamed the deputy. "My name is Camilla Matthews," she said. The room went dead quiet. "I am not a sin," she said. "I am a wife. I am not a malcontent. I am a mother. We are not here to talk about business. We are here to talk about justice." She looked at the faces, the women, the men. "You teach your children to be good. You teach them to be brave. You teach them to share. What are you teaching them now? This man, Malcolm Delaney, he broke the law. He destroyed my home, his property. He tried to have my husband killed. He has faced no justice. This man, Ethan Matthews, he obeyed the law. He saved my children. He protected his family. And he is being punished. You are all being punished." She turned to the preacher. "Madrina," she said, using the Apache word. "You speak of God. Does your God reward criminals? Does your God starve children?" She turned back to the crowd. "What kind of town is this, a town where one man can burn and steal and threaten and then write new laws to protect himself? What lesson will your children learn tonight that bravery is punished, that kindness is a weakness? Or will you teach them that a community is stronger than a bully?" She was finished. The silence was absolute. Before Delaney could roar, Amos Keller stood up. He walked to the front. "Mistress Matthews asks a fine question about justice." Keller said. He turned to the town council. "And I have an answer. Mr. Delaney, you were arrested for destruction of property. You paid a small fine, but the matter of restitution is not settled." "This is not the place," Delaney began. "It is the only place." Keller said, "I have here a full accounting. The cost to replace the trough, the market value of 30 head of cattle, lost due to your conspiracy. The sworn affidavit of your employee, Jeb, who confirms you ordered the attack. The total is $800. A collective gasp went through the room. It was a fortune. "You will pay this restitution to Mr. and Mistress Matthews." Keller said, "Or the district court will seize your assets until you do." Delaney was purple. He was trapped. He looked at the council. "This is blackmail, this ordinance." "The ordinance is rejected," Silas said. His voice was loud. "And you will pay the bill." "Pay the bill," Gunnar yelled. Suddenly, the town was not afraid. The power was broken. The council, seeing the tide turn, acted. "Mr. Delaney," the head said, "you will pay the restitution, in full, by order of this council." Delaney was defeated. He was ruined, not in money, but in power. The law he had twisted had finally been twisted back. As the meeting broke apart, as Delaney stormed out, a sound began. It was the church bell. Gunnar had run across the street. He was pulling the rope. The bell rang. It was not for a service. It was not for a fire. It was for the town. It was a sound of freedom, a sound of a community, broken and flawed, that had finally, haltingly, stood together. Ethan and Camilla walked out onto the street. The bell was ringing. The air was cool. Silas came up. He clapped Ethan on his good shoulder. "Mr. Matthews, that was a hell of a thing." Mistress Avery was smiling. "The freight order from Kansas City will be here in 2 weeks," she said. "I added your order to it. Oats, flour, and I found a bolt of blue cloth for the girls." Ethan looked at Camilla. She was looking up at the bell. People were walking by. Some nodded, some still looked away. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But the long winter, they would survive it. They would survive it together. Time is a river. In the high plains, it is a slow one. It grinds stone and shapes canyons. It can also heal. The drought broke. It did not break all at once. It broke in a series of small, stubborn storms. The rains came back. The land that had been a hard, brown shell for so long finally softened. Green returned. The grass grew thick. The creek bed that had been a dry scar for a decade now held water, thin and clear, through most of the year. 5 years passed. The ranch was no longer a small, desperate outpost. It was a home. The restitution from Malcolm Delaney, $800, had been enough. It had not made them rich. It had allowed them to survive. Ethan had bought 20 head of cattle. He had bought seed. He had bought lumber. The house was bigger. He had added a true second room, not a curtain, but a room with walls. The porch was wider. It wrapped around the side of the house now. Chenoa was 11, Tianita was 8. They were no longer the small, terrified shadows who had hidden behind their mother. They were daughters of the ranch. They sat their ponies as if they were born to them. They rode with the wind. Their laughter was a sound that the plains had not heard before. It was a mix of two worlds. It was strong. One afternoon, Ethan was replacing a post in the main corral. The wood was new. He worked with a steady, practiced rhythm. His right hand was scarred. The fire had left its mark. The skin was tight and white over his knuckles. He would never have the full use of it again, but he had learned. He worked with what he had. Camilla was beside him. She was holding the post steady. Her shoulder had healed. It ached when the cold came, but it was strong. She was strong. She was always strong. "A little to the left," she said. "It is straight," Ethan said, squinting. "It is not. It is leaning toward the mountain." "It is supposed to lean toward the mountain. The ground is softer there." She looked at him. A small smile played on her lips. "That is the worst excuse you have ever given me." He stopped. He looked at her. He smiled. It was an easy smile now. It lived on his face. "All right, we will do it your way." "We always do it my way," she said. "That," he said, tapping the post straight, "is the truest thing you have ever said." They laughed. It was a small, shared sound. The sound of 5 years of partnership, of arguments about fences and droughts and the right way to mend a roof. It was the sound of a marriage. Tianita and Chenoa rode up. They dismounted with the easy grace of their mother. "We have checked the south pasture." Chenoa said. She was tall for her age. She had her mother her eyes and Ethan her stubborn jaw. "The fence is holding, but the grass is low. We will move them to the west lot tomorrow." Ethan said, "Good work." The girls went to the house. Their work was done. Camilla watched them go. "Chenoa was telling she began. She corrected herself. "Tianita. She was telling Tianita the story." Again. "The story?" Ethan asked, tamping the dirt around the post. "The fire?" Camilla said. "She likes to tell it. Tianita does not remember. Not really. Chenoa does." Ethan stopped. He looked at the house. He remembered the smoke, the terror. Is that good for her?" "She tells it her own way," Camilla said. "She was telling Tianita the fire was hot. It was a bad bull, a mean one. But then she said, 'But Mother told me, the fire that melts the iron also forges the steel.' She likes that part." Ethan leaned on his shovel. "She is a strong girl." "She is our girl," Camilla said. The legacy of that choice, the one made in the dust, was not just in their own family. It was sitting on their new, wide porch. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the porch became a school. It was not planned. It had just happened. It started with Camilla teaching her daughters to read English. Then Silas, the farmer, had asked. His son was struggling. The town school was only open 6 months of the year. Now, there were 6 children. Silas, his son, 2 children from a new family, the Millers, who had bought a small farm to the east, and 3 Apache children. Chaitin now lived with his band in the low hills, a half-day his ride away. He brought his nephews to learn the white man his letters. Camilla taught reading. Ethan taught arithmetic. The children sat together. They shared slates. It was a small, fragile, and deeply practical kind of justice. It was a promise. That evening, after the children had gone home, Ethan was carving a piece of wood. He had become good with a knife. It was work his stiff hand could still do. He was finishing the new sign. Camilla came out. She brought him a cup of coffee. She sat beside him. He held up the wood. It was pine. He had sanded it smooth, in clear, simple letters. He had carved Matthews, and beneath it, he had carved the symbols Chaitin had taught him, the name for her family, the name for Camilla. "It is one word," he said, "for one home." She touched the carved Apache letters. Her fingers traced the lines. "It is a good sign," she said. The world was not perfect. It never would be. Malcolm Delaney was gone. His power, broken by the restitution and the town his quiet rebellion, had crumbled. He had sold his land. He had moved east. But the hate he had lived on was still there. It lived in the hard stares of strangers. It lived in the wagon that passed them on the road to town. The driver looking straight ahead, refusing to wave. Ethan saw the wagon pass. He felt the old sting. Camilla put her hand on his, her good hand on his scarred one. "It does not matter," she said. "The man in that wagon, his house is cold, ours is warm." He turned his hand over. He held hers. She was right. The town did not have to love them. They had built their own world. They had built it out of the ruins. The heroism that mattered was not the single, bold, frantic moment in the fire. It was this, the daily choice, the stubborn act of building a home, of choosing kindness. The highest thanks for saving a life was to share one, to give not just safety, but power, to become partners. The sun was going down. It was a painting. The sky was gold and deep purple. It spilled its light over the new green grass. It was a benediction. From the corral, they heard the sound of their daughters. They were laughing, a high, clear, happy sound. Ethan looked at Camilla. She was looking at him. Her face, which he had first seen as a mask of stone, was now the map of his whole life. It was marked by sun, and time, and pain, and it was soft, it was strong. He did not need to speak. She did not need to either. They both understood. The miracle had not been the rescue. That was just an accident. A moment of instinct. The true miracle was everything that came after. The choice, the fear, the paper, the fight, the quiet evenings, the shared work, the laughter of their children. The miracle was the long, hard, beautiful work of building a family. It was not a noun. It was a verb. It was the choice they made, every single day. Thank you for listening to our story. We would love to connect with you. So please comment below and let us know where you are listening from. And share your thoughts on Ethan and Camilla, his journey. Please subscribe to our channel, Wild West Night, like this video. And support us further by pressing the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.